Hello, welcome everybody. We'll give everyone just a minute or so to make this transition to our session, and um, hopefully everyone was able to take a quick bathroom break. I love that people are already saying hello. If you don't mind, just kind of sharing where you're from, what grade level do you teach, so I get an idea of who's all in the room with us today. And then we'll get rolling here in about 30 seconds or so, just to give everybody a chance to make this transition. Hey, some Fresno people. I'm also in Fresno. Wonderful. Lots of California. Santa Cruz. Good morning, Santa Cruz. Went to college in Santa Cruz, so I have a special place in my heart for Santa Cruz. Love Santa Cruz. Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Excellent. We have lots of elementary teachers in here. Looks like a lot of primary teachers, pre-K, K2, third grade. Fabulous. Excellent. I'm going to scroll through here. Excellent. All right. Well, I have a lot to share today, so I want to make sure that we have lots of time to get through all of the information that I have to share with you. Just a couple of things as I share my screen and get us ready to go is a couple of reminders that we have obviously the chat box, which is there for us to communicate with each other as we are right now. But also don't forget that we have the Q&A box as well. So that Q&A, if you have a specific question, feel free to put it there. Let me move my chat box out of the way so that I can kind of keep track of any specific questions that are popping up that are separate from kind of our chat. Sometimes the chat piece gets a little crazy and it's difficult to see all of those things happening at the same time. All right, excellent. Well, I hope that you chose this session because you were interested or intrigued by the literature connections. I have a huge passion for children's books and incorporating children's books into our science and into our teaching. So I have a ton of resources to share with you today, and there will be time in the session to do some clicking around. I've purposely put that in there. So just know that there will be an opportunity to do a little clicking around because I will be throwing a lot at you. Okay. Welcome. My name is Leslie Gates. I'm the science content specialist, and I am here at the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, and I work in the STEM department here. So I have lots of opportunities to really have that integrating approach, especially in the K-3 classroom. I've spent a lot of time in the TK through 5th, 6th grade classrooms, and I am super passionate, if you didn't hear me before, about making sure that we're utilizing this amazing children's literature in our instruction. And I'll go into all of the reasons why, although if you're here, you probably already are bought into the importance of all of that as well. My email is down here at the bottom, and also my socials. Please reach out. Anything that you have questions about, or if you're digging into things and have questions, please reach out. I love being a resource for teachers. That's my job, and I love doing it. So please reach out. As we kind of already got to know a little of the people in the room today, so thank you for sharing who you are, where you're coming from today, and the grade levels that you teach. We are coming from all over, but what I love is that we're all here because we have the same love and passion for our primary students and making sure that we're providing them this amazing learning opportunities. So thank you for that. Our goals for this session, there's 3 goals. We're going to explore the role of literature in STEAM, right? What role does children's literature play in our designing of STEAM lessons and activities and experiences for our students? And then, of course, I wanted to give you a ton of resources. So we're going to dig into some book selections and give you some ideas about strategies and how to incorporate them into your lesson planning. And then I also want to actually give you some specific examples that you could literally go and teach on Monday. So hopefully maybe some of you are on summer break already. So thinking about maybe in August that you will go and do some of these great activities with your students, but wanted to make sure you could walk away with something to do right away. Of course, everyone's always asking about the presentation. What I've done just to make life a little easier is that everything that I have that I'm sharing with you is all linked in this presentation. Literally everything is in the presentation. So if you look at your resources link, that's part of our webinar piece, you can see there's a PDF of this presentation in the documents, and you are welcome to download that, and then you will have access to it. You will want to make sure you have access to this because we do have opportunity to explore, so I want you to be able to go explore. Because I'm sharing a lot of resources, I went ahead and linked every image of a book that you see in this presentation has a link. And I went ahead and linked it to Amazon just because I felt like that was a safe place to link to so that you can read a synopsis of the book. Oftentimes it'll give you a grade level or an age level that they think the book is appropriate for. And then if you're super excited and you want the book, you can order it, which I do have an Amazon book ordering problem. I don't know if anyone else does, but I definitely do. Okay, so now that you have the session, and the presentation, and you have an idea of what we're going to do today, let's do this. I am really quickly here. I am not able to see the Q&A. So, hopefully Lisa can help me if there's any questions, since I'm not able to see the Q&A, or if you want to just throw it in our chat, you can do that as well. And I'm glad there's a few others out there that have a children's book ordering problem. That is us. Okay, so I want to start with a quick introductory book that you can use. And again, I chose books that could be used not only in kinder through third grade, but personally, I think these books could go even lower and they could also go higher. So I know there are some pre-K, TK teachers out there, and I think that that's where this book, it can go any direction. All right, so if you've not heard of this book, I'm going to share this book with you by showing the video.
Not a Box by Antoinette Portis. Not a box. To children everywhere, sitting in cardboard boxes. Why are you sitting in a box?
It's not a box.
What are you doing on top of that box?
It's not a box.
Why are you squirting a box?
I said it's not a box.
Now you're wearing a box?
This is not a box.
Are you still standing around in that box?
It's not a box.
Well, what is it then?
It's mine, not a box. This side up.
So one of the most simple stories, but I think one any of us that work with or have had children of our own, we know that you give them a great gift and they're way more excited about the box than they were the gift. And I think there's just something about the creativity of a box it can be literally anything. So I love posing that question after reading the book. What is your not a box? And I know that some of you may be getting some boxes at the beginning of the school year with your Amazon orders or all of your new curriculum that comes in all of those boxes. Don't Don't get rid of them. Hold on to them, save them this summer, save boxes, ask friends, and have those boxes and allow students to just get creative on what they would do with the box. We think about STEAM, we think about, oh, this has to be super planned and super scripted, when really what I love about STEM and STEAM is that it's about creativity and allowing students that thinking. So here's a couple of ways I've seen teachers do modifications of this, so they don't have boxes, nor do they have maybe have that ability to also do something crazy with the boxes. I've seen teachers give students a brown piece of construction paper and say, what's your not a box? And I've also seen just a handout where they're given a square. And I'm sure you've seen things like that too. I see those around where there's kind of a squiggle on a piece of paper and we ask students, what is this? And this is that same extension. But of course, if you can give them boxes and let them be creative, it's one of my favorite things. I typically bring in all of my random stuff. And I know teachers, we have closets of random stuff, craft things, pipe cleaners, coloring pencils, all of those fun little scraps of things that we have. And we just give it to the students and say, what's your not a box? So this is one of my favorite activities. And honestly, I've done this with teachers at teacher trainings, and teachers have just as much fun with this. So if any of you do any kind of teacher training or work with teachers, this is also a really fun activity to do. Now, because we're talking literature today, go figure, there's like hundreds of other things, other books that can also go along with this topic. Here's literally 8 of the maybe hundreds of books that are out there. These are some of my favorite, so that you could extend that idea of this creativity and box and what can we do with a box by looking at a bunch of different options. And so I love bringing in as many pieces of literature. These can be out. This could be a week-long project. This could be beginning of the school year kind of thing, or even an end of the year kind of thing too, where kids are just kind of brain fried and they just want to have some fun. Yes, I love that. The dot, I've seen the dot as well, just as creative, just as STEAM connected as well. Thank you so much for adding thoughts and ideas, because there will be an opportunity to share some of those as well. So keep sharing, because this is a grand group of lots of thoughts and ideas. So please share. All right. So as we get into one of the goals for the session was to think about, well, what is the role of literature in STEAM? Can't we do these STEAM projects without children's literature? And of course, my answer is absolutely you can. But it does really do play a really important role. And I want to make sure we talk about that. But first, I want to take just a couple of minutes to define STEAM. And the reason for that, I know some of you are like, oh my gosh, how many times do I have to hear what STEAM means? For me, what I have discovered is that we've taken the word STEM or STEAM and we've created multiple definitions of what that really means. So before I go into what all of my resources, I want you to understand where my brain is coming from when I think of the word STEAM or STEM, and how I think about it when I'm designing a lesson or some activities around STEM or STEAM for my students. To me, I think STEAM has kind of been grounded in this idea of engineering. And most of the projects that I see that are STEAM or STEM tend to be just kind of an engineering challenge, which is super important because it's all about designing and building solutions, and we're getting students to think in that way, which is awesome. But if we start thinking about the other letters that are in STEM and STEAM, we want to not forget the role that they play. For me, science and engineering go hand in hand, because when we're engineering something, we're really trying to use some scientific principles in order to make sure we're constructing something or building a solution that's actually viable. If I'm going to build a bridge, I need to know a lot about science. I need to know properties of materials. I need to understand gravity. I need to understand weight and mass. I need to know a lot of science in order to apply it to my engineering. Technology obviously is in there as well. And we think technology is being electronic, but technology just is really anything that solves the problem. For instance, a paperclip is considered technology because the paperclip was designed as a way to solve a problem of keeping our papers together. So technology can kind of take a lot of different roles as we go on. Now, what sometimes gets left out are the last two letters there, which is the A and the M. Math. There's so much math opportunities that happen when we're doing STEM and STEAM. And when we think about quantifying and looking for patterns in the data that we're collecting as we're designing or solving a problem, super important. And then the art for me is that creativity and that expression of just kind of, can we be creative with it? And to me, there's a difference between art and craft per se, that a craft tends to be something that you are copying somebody else doing, where art is that creative side of it. So we want to be able to incorporate that with our students as well. So when I think of designing or thinking about where a literature might fit in, I think about all of the letters on the top. And I've gotten to the point where I don't need to write this down as much, but those first few times I was really trying to figure out how do I look at literature and how do I make sure I'm really doing something that's STEAM connected and not just an engineering challenge. This is what I think of. So I think of this little graph, super easy. Where as I think of each of the letters, I think about how much is that letter represented in the lesson that I'm creating or the activity that I'm doing. So for instance, I always like to put this up here because when we think STEAM, we think, oh my gosh, I need a lesson or an activity where all 5 letters are highly addressed and all of them are there. And it's just this beautiful thing that's happening. While that would be fabulous, that really isn't a reality because it would be difficult to create something where all of those letters are just highly addressed at the forefront of that lesson. So what ends up happening is we get something more like this. So I might create an activity where the engineering is highly addressed, meaning that's kind of my focal point that I am focused on with my students. And then I look to see, well, is it just engineering? And can I make more letters represented in that activity? So this particular activity, whatever this was that I was creating, looked at the science and said, oh, we could really bump up the science and make it a little bit more significant in the lesson plan. So we're really thinking about how can we bump up that science. Now, for those of you K3, where we have NGSS or science standards, that's where we want to look at the science standards and say, is there a science standard that I can pull out or connect this engineering activity to? So that it's not just kind of just a random engineering activity. Let's make it help us meet a standard. And then maybe there's an art piece that I can connect. That's a small piece of the lesson. It's not a focal point of the lesson, but it's there so that the students start seeing, oh, this activity that we're doing is not just engineering. It's not just science. It's not just art. There's a way that all of these come together. And maybe this particular lesson, we didn't really worry about technology and math so much, and that's okay. We'll talk about that. Here's another example. Maybe I've done another lesson and I realize, oh, the science, this is a very highly addressed science activity. And I'm going to tie in an engineering piece. It's there. It's there. The kids are going to engage in that engineering practices and the engineering thinking. And then there's going to be a little bit of math there. Now, the math may not be standard driven math, meaning I might not be working on a specific math standard, but we all know that the more students count, the more that they add, the more that they categorize, the more that they are addressing math concepts, whether or not it's a standard or not, is super important. So in this particular lesson, there was some math attached, but it may not have been standard-based math per se. Now, if I was looking at this lesson, I said, you know what, there's a math standard that I could tie into this lesson. I can make that math bar go up higher. That's incredible. So I use this chart as a way for me to think about those 5 letters and to think about how can I really make sure that the activity I'm putting together is really looking at those different letters and that it's not just becoming all just engineering or all just science, or maybe it's all just art. And I thought I was doing STEAM, but really I need to address some of those other pieces a little bit stronger. So for me, and for the definition that I've seen out there, when we're doing STEAM or STEM, that the foundation is that we're integrating at least 2 of the content areas. For me, I like to strive for 3, just because I feel like we're in it. Let's just go. Let's just do this. Let's do 3 of those letters. And again, it doesn't have to all be highly addressed, but can they be within that lesson? So now that I have the lesson designed, how do I now think about the children's literature and the book and how it's going to tie in or support this activity or this learning? Because now I know what the students need to do and how I want to do that. So I now need to think about the books. And so why do we want to pull in the books? Here's just a couple of highlights of what I love about using storybooks or children's literature. Curiosity, engagement, obviously we all know that everybody loves a story, even adults, we all love a story. So storytelling can captivate young minds and spark that curiosity. And I also love that our students can start to see themselves. I mean, that's really what we want, right? Can they relate to or look up to some of these characters in our storybooks? And also, are there storybooks where they represent diverse characters? Can they see themselves in those characters and say, oh, well, I can do this too. That character really liked that. I can do that. Here's another reason we want to use literature. It really does enhance comprehension and retention. There's something about a wonderful story. And when we're talking about some really abstract STEAM concepts, sometimes it helps them to understand when there's a visual or a picture in the book where they can make connections to that. And it helps them kind of put that accessible, makes it more accessible for the students. Of course, my favorite thing is a lot of children's books are all about showing students how to be problem solvers and how to think critically and how to ask questions. So we definitely can use those characters in the story for the students to start seeing that, oh, that character didn't get it right the first time, but they figured it out. I can do that too. We want to really model that for the students. And of course, children's literature is a great way to think literally outside the box, where we can get into some creative projects, creative thinking. And yes, with literature, if you're working on ELA standards, you can absolutely pull in ELA standards. That's why I feel like that STEAM should have another E in it, so that we could look at ELA connections as well. Then it gets to be too many letters, so I don't know. But yes, definitely look for those ELA connections as well. Okay, so these next couple of slides that I'm going to share with you, after I share these with you, we're going to put a couple minutes on the clock and I'm going to be quiet and you're going to go click around and just start looking. And so don't get distracted too quickly here. Let me talk about the couple of resources and then I'm going to let you dig, I promise. So this is actually that image that you see on the right-hand side is actually a PDF document, and each of those books on there are linked. So when you click on that link or on that image, you will it will download a PDF and then you can access all of the links there. but these are a few. And again, I had a hard time deciding which books to put on here, but these are my favorite books for character traits. So when you're trying to teach your students all of these traits that a good STEM thinker is, these are those traits we want them to develop. But we want them to see it in other children through the storybooks. So all of these character traits are all found in these books. And if you have any others, you're going to have an opportunity to share in a little bit. But again, these were some of my favorites. And then, oops, went too far. And then I love a wonderful biography. And there are so many amazing scientist and engineer biographies for students, geared for students. And again, wanting them to see that there are people like them that had crazy interests and they made a career out of it. My favorite here is this Joan Proctor, who was a huge fan of reptiles back when that was not a cool thing for women. And she used that as a career. She actually built a career around a passion she had as a young child. And I want children to see that there are opportunities to do really fun things with their interests. And so again, these were just a few of my favorite biographies that I love to use with students. Again, in a minute, if you click on that image, it'll download a PDF and then you can access each of those images. The last thing I want to share with you, and this might have popped up depending on what other sessions you've been in today, but Count Play Explore has started to create some STEAM Explorer book guides, which means these books that you see right here have all been created with strategies in mind, meaning here's the book. Now, what do I do with this book? What are some ways I can engage my students with this book? And also parents. So if you are a parent, you can use these as well. So these are all linked so you can look directly at it, but let me show you what you will see. Oops. I did not mean to go all the way to the end. I clicked the wrong link. Too many things on my screen here. Here we go. So a STEAM Explorer guide, and these are what's linked to each of those book images on the slide prior. It has before, during, and after reading. So when you're reading the story with some students or with your own children, it tells you how to interact with the book and your child, what questions to ask. What are some things you can do with the book? And I'm always appreciative of some strategies, even though I feel like I know how to interact with stories and children. I love seeing strategies. Then it has some STEAM thinking. So if you're trying to get your students to make some STEAM connections, it gives you some ideas of how to engage your students that way. And then if you're looking at standard connections, whether it be preschool TK or K through 3, they have the standard connections as well, so that if you are looking for something specific to meet a specific standard, it is connected for you. So let me go back really quick. Whoop. So these books here all have one of those guides connected to it. So that's something you can go click around if you'd like to look at that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put 5 minutes. I know, well, I'm going to do 6 minutes. I'm going to put 6 minutes, a 6-minute timer on. And what I want you to do is to go back through those last couple of slides that I shared with you. And I want you to think about, start making your own, make your own shopping list. Start thinking about some books and what you might incorporate into your books for next year. Also, if you have any favorite STEAM connected books that aren't represented there, I did create a quick Padlet. So if you want to go to the Padlet, you can QR code it like with your phone, so you can scan it there. Or if you have the slides or the presentation downloaded, you can also just click on the Padlet link there. All right, so your task for the next 6 minutes is to go click on some books and find some new books for your collection. And let me put my timer on. Okay, so the question here, let me go back just to clarify. So the only ones that will have the guide that I showed you are these books on this slide. So the STEAM Explorers book guides, these are the only ones that will have the guide that I showed you. These here will just take you to the Amazon where you can look at the link or look at the book, read the description of the book. If you need the presentation, go into the resources folder. Let me keep going. If you go into the webinar, into the resources link or the little tab for resources, you will see under documents this PDF of this slideshow, and you can just download it. Okay, so I'm going to put six minutes on, and then I'll bring you back, and we have a couple more things to do. I'm going to let you explore for about 2 more minutes, and then I do have a couple more things to share. I know you might be getting hungry, those on the Pacific Standard Time over on the Pacific West Coast here, but hang in there. That was a very quick 6 minutes. I know some of you might need some more time, but you'll have plenty of time. Those links are there forever. But I did want to share a couple more things with you just to give you some ideas. As you're thinking about, so how do I look at children's literature? One way is to look like we did, right? Looking at that graph and saying, okay, we have the highlighting in these areas, and I really want to work on character traits with this activity. Maybe it's the beginning of the year, and you're working on group work and you're doing those kinds of things. Now you have some books to kind of pull from, but really then it's, so now what? Now, what if I have a really great book and I don't know what to do with it? How do I engage my students in an activity from that? So I wanted to just give you a couple of, again, I could have put probably 200 examples up here, but I only wanted to put a few. And again, I try to pick ones that can go across grade levels and across grade levels. So this could be appropriate for all grade levels. Of course, you may have to make modifications as needed. Now, as I was looking at the examples I put on here, I realized that it was kind of all of these stemmed in that engineering as the foundation. So that engineering, if we think about that STEAM chart, the E was up really high. But then I was able to start thinking about, well, what are some of those other things that we can pull in there to make stronger, to make it more of a STEAM activity or STEM activity? And because of time, we won't listen to this story, but if you don't know The Wall in the Middle of the Book, this is one of my favorite stories. I say that about every book though. But this is a great book. Again, just trying to get students to think about creativity, funny, and how there might be some issues that pop up in this book. And if you don't know the story, really quickly, there is literally, when you open the pages of the book, that brick wall is in the middle of the book, and there's stuff happening on both sides of the wall. So every page you open, there's some drama happening that with the wall right in the middle. So I've seen this used a couple of different ways. I've seen teachers then use this to have students build a wall with different materials. And this is a great way to think about, well, what materials do make a good wall? Do we want something strong? Do we need something sturdy? Do we need something, how tall do we need the wall, right? All of those great questions for students. And then, of course, one of the other funny parts in the story is that one of the characters gets up and over the wall. And so I've seen teachers take this to where they try to get stuff over the wall. How can we move something over the wall? One of the ways is to build a catapult for older students. That's a fun way to get them to think about literally flinging something over the wall. But I've also seen them try to build ladders, try to do other things where they've built a wall and then trying to get over the wall. So a lot of creativity, a lot of possible conversations about science and about math. And then if you're working with littles, you can also talk about colors, shapes, all of those fun things that we want to incorporate in all of those conversations that make it more STEAM than it is just an engineering piece. So here's a couple more examples. This one, there's actually two books that I've used. I used to just use Who Sank the Boat, which is a hilarious little story if you don't know the book. And then I discovered The Friendship, and it is a sweet story about friends, and the little hedgehog is in search of friends. And so I love the story because it adds another element that we didn't really talk about in STEAM and using children's literature, but also other important characteristics that we're trying to teach students about. What does being a friend mean, and how do we work with our friends and things like that. So it has another fun level. But the engineering challenge tied to this is you have to build a boat that can hold your friends. And teachers use a variety of materials. They can be super flexible with whatever you have around. And then, of course, they test their boats. This particular teacher had those little animal counters for math So then she did a whole math activity with it as well. How many blue friends did you have? How many red friends did you have? How many green friends did you have? And then they compared in class. How many had more friends? This boat held 10 friends. This boat held 8 friends. What boat held more friends? So a lot of math she pulled into this lesson, along with the students' creativity in creating the boat. One of my favorite stories with this, because I was actually in the classroom as we were doing this activity with, these were second graders. And one group was so focused on the aesthetics of the boat. They had a mast, and on the mast, they had named their boat. And they said, oh, well, our friends need benches in the boat. Well, they spent so much time doing the creative side of the boat, their boat didn't hold very many friends. So when they did the redo, which is I love about engineering, right? It fails, but we learn. They had a much more successful boat, but they did keep those little aesthetic pieces of their boat. And it was a lot of fun to watch. I don't know how many of you do things for Groundhog's Day. This is a hilarious book, Groundhog's Runaway Shadow. I've seen teachers use this for Groundhog's Day. What a great opportunity to use this book as a STEAM connected challenge. In the story, the shadow, the groundhog and his shadow get along okay, but the shadow just wants to go out on adventures, so finally just leaves the groundhog and goes on his own adventures. And on those adventures, the shadow ends up at the Eiffel Tower and the pyramids and just does all this fun stuff. So we then could create these Eiffel Towers, and you could use straws, they've used paper, you can use it out of different materials. So there was that connection. But then one of my favorite creative ways is to talk about shadows and what is a shadow, and can we do some art creativity with shadows? And these were just some quick images that I pulled, but I just think being able to use that creative side of shadows when we're talking about the Groundhog Day, why not make it more of a STEAM day for you? That would be a lot of fun. So think about that next February when you are getting ready to celebrate Groundhog's Day again. But there's some STEAM ways to use this book. And this is probably one of my favorite storybooks. It is just beautifully written and beautifully illustrated, and it's a true story. I believe this is a model and or actress who grew up in Africa, and she would have to go get water every day. And it's just a beautifully written story. And so when I read this, I immediately was drawn not only to the story, but I was drawn to the STEAM connections always. And so I thought, engineering, okay, can they create some kind of pot or container that can hold water? But then the math components there, if you build something that's too heavy, obviously this would be a smaller model, wouldn't be necessarily big like she has on her head, but thinking about the weight of the pot, if it's too heavy with water, right? Can't put that on your head, it's too much. And do some comparison with math, science. This is a perfect connection for second grade, where is your land and water? What if you had to go get water from a source somewhere far away, and where would that local source be for you? And then also about the properties of the materials of what you would build that from. And then I saw the sculpt and paint connections of, there's a lot of significance of the colors used on the pots. And that's kind of brought up in the story, so you can get into some of those cultural pieces as well. So very beautiful is one of my favorites. So I know we're coming up on time here. So here's the 3 things we did this last hour, so fast: the role of literature in STEAM, book selections and strategies, and integration ideas. So hopefully you have a handful of new thoughts and ideas that you can run with either this summer if you're doing any summer programming, or with your own children and with your students for next school year. I will be, don't forget to fill out the survey for session 2. And I also will be doing, I'm available during the Q&A at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And I will be there during that Q&A. You get to choose who you want to go visit for a little while. So if you have any specific questions, because I know we're kind of out of time, please feel free to pop in there, and I'd love to come. I'd love to share more things with you as well. I don't know why I was never able to open the questions. So, and it shows me there's like a question in the Q&A, but it won't open for me. Let me stop sharing and see if that helps. Okay. So there was some issues. Okay. So hopefully that's taken care of. All right. Thank you so much for your time. And again, please feel free to reach out to me. Remember, this presentation is in the resources. Thank you for all of your enthusiasm, and enjoy the rest of the symposium today. And if you want, I hope to see you over in the Q&A if you have any specific questions for me. Have a great one.